Let's welcome the fifth panelist, Dr. Cheng Kaiyuan, a professor at the National陽明交大University with a specialty in philosophy of language and mind and metaphysics. And he's also specialized in Zhuangzi philosophy. And Dr. Cheng Kaiyuan is going to present to us. I hope that you can be all quiet at this moment to attend the further discussion of our panel. And the title for Cheng Kaiyuan is The Body and the Brain in a Selfless Mindfulness Practice of the Zhuangzi. Let's welcome Dr. Cheng Kaiyuan.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the organizers for the invitation. It's great to be here. And we all know that Zhuangzi is a great Taoist philosopher in the warring state of China. But let me first explain a little bit why Zhuangzi in the conference on Buddhism, consciousness, and AI, why I'm here. I think Zhuangzi has proposed a no-self thesis and emphasized the importance of the practice of meditation, similar to Buddhism, but has received relatively little rational reconstruction. And I aim to offer one here. In Taoism and Buddhism, they are two of the main cornerstones in the Chinese and Asian intellectual traditions. And in the age of AI, it's probably better to take at least two great traditions to react to it. Okay. And there are two routes to no-self in Zhuangzi, from what I can see. One is the philosophical discovery of no-self, and it's a thesis that self, as a persistently existing thing in the mental realm, does not exist. And second is the meditative practice of experiencing no-self. And a highly skillful performance of which meditation is a supreme version, comes close to Tao in the view of Zhuangzi. So the aim of today's talk is first to present a skeptical argument through the dream of the butterfly story in the Zhuangzi, leading to a metaphysical claim that there is no self. And second is to show how meditation as a surpassing form of skill leads to an experiential state of no self. And third is to illustrate how the body, brain, and environment are intricately involved in a state of no-self on a textual and neuroscientific basis. So part one on the logical no-self, or knowing that there is no self. In the opening paragraph of chapter 2 of Zhuangzi Qi here is a master doing the meditation, Nanguo Ziji. And in the end of the meditation, the master was saying that I've lost myself. 今者无上我. And the disciple, Yanchen Ziyou, was asking the master, what does that mean, that I've lost myself? And intriguingly, the master was explaining that there are three piping of sound in nature. 天籁、人籁、地籁, the piping of man, the piping of earth, and the piping of heaven. And in the case of the piping of earth and man, somehow the cause or the root of the sound is kind of obvious, right? In the case of piping of man, like playing the music or talking, the source of the sound comes from the instrument, from the man playing the instrument. And in the case of the piping of earth, the source of the sound is also relatively clear. It comes from the wind blowing through the kind of different structure of the physical environment, right? But in the case of piping of heaven, somehow the master was saying something intriguing. He was saying that who does the sounding? 怒者其谁也. So the source of the sound is really unclear. And then what immediately follows is a passage where the master continued to explain to the disciple that there is a world, not an outer physical world, where sounds are abundant. There is an inner world where it's very lively. So there are mental states of all kinds that appear and disappear, that come and go, day and night. In the end of the passage, he was saying that no one knows where they sprout from. 莫知其所萌. It's interesting whether there is a kind of a source or a processor of all these different kinds of mental states. I think that's the kind of intriguing question I think this passage seems to be talking about. And it's actually turned out to be the case that Zhuangzi was interested in asking what may be the source or root of all the different kinds of mental states that come and go. So here is a passage that immediately follows saying that without them, without those mental states, we would not exist. And without us, they will have nothing to take hold of. And this comes close to the matter, but I do not know what makes them the way they are. It would seem as though they have some true master, 真在. And yet I find no trace of him. He can act like he's certain, but I cannot see his form. He has identity, but no form. And he continued to say that it would seem as though there must be some true Lord, similar to true master, 真君, among them. But whether I succeed in discovering his identity or not, it neither adds to nor detracts from his truth or reality. So here, I take this passage. I mean, it's very, very profound and very intriguing. To say something like the following, that there seems to be an undeniable impression of having a self. I take the true master as some kind of self. In one's conscious mental realm, but what is the nature of a self? Right? In the passage, Zhuangzi appears to affirm the reality of a true master or a self in my reading. But I think he's really more puzzled about its nature. And does Zhuangzi offer a further kind of answer to what the nature of a self or true master is? And here is my reading. It's the last step of the skeptical argument. And it's the dream of the butterfly story, 庄周梦蝶. And it's a story that I think probably all of you have heard about the story. Once Zhuangzi dreamed he was a butterfly flittering and fluttering around, happy with himself and doing as he pleased. He didn't know he was Zhuangzi. Suddenly he woke up and there he was, solid and unmistakable Zhuangzi. But he didn't know if it was Zhuangzi who had dreamed he was a butterfly or a butterfly dreaming he was Zhuangzi. And I take this story as the last step of the consideration of the nature of a true master. And the moral is something like this. There is an entrenched assumption, I think it's naturally that many of us hold, that a self is invariant in all contexts. However, the butterfly dream story presents one context where the identity of a self is changed from a Zhuangzi to a butterfly. So that shows that the assumption in question is wrong. And that leads to the conclusion that a self, as a persistently existing thing, as something invariant, is an illusion. And there are other textual supports for this reading, like we temporarily get involved in something or other and proceed to call it myself. But how can we know if what we call self has any self to it? That occurs in the text of Zhuangzi. And there's another statement that is more direct and straightforward, saying that the perfect man has no self, 自人无己. And part two, experiencing no self. or knowing what it's like to be no self. And there is an extraordinary experience in a highly skillful performance, such as what is described in the story of cutting oxen, like 庖丁解牛. So Tung described his skill is extraordinary skill, saying that what I care about is the Tao, which goes beyond skill, 道经无己. And I take this as showing that Zhuangzi placed the status of skill as very high, as something close to Tao. And in the process of performing such a highly skillful practice, it was described that, and now I go at it by spirits, but don't look with my eyes. Perception and understanding have come to a stop, and spirit moves where it wants. And the spirits, I think, does not refer to some kind of ghostly experience, but really it refers to some kind of flow experience. And there is obviously some kind of dynamic coupling process that goes on between the crook and the ox. So for example, he described that there are spaces between the joints and the blade of the knife has really no thickness. If you insert what has no thickness into such spaces, then there is plenty of room, more than enough for the blade to play about it. And after the cooking finished the dissecting, he was describing that I stand there holding the knife and look all around me, completely satisfied and reluctant to move on, showing that there's some kind of self-body environment resonance of the cook. So after watching this performance, Lord Wen Jun was making the comment that I've heard the words of cooking and learn how to care for life. So highly skillful performance like this is key to well-being. And I take the moral of cooking as saying something that in a highly skillful body-involving performance, such as dissecting an ox, a dynamic resonance between the person and the surrounding environment is achieved, where sensation and cognition are dropped out. And meditation practice, which is abundant in the text of Zhuangzi, such as the sitting and forgetting practice, is something similar to performing a skill. So in the dialogue between Yan Hui and Confucius, a kind of fictional dialogue in the text of Zhuangzi, Yan Hui was doing the sitting and forgetting practice, and he was saying that I've forgotten benevolence and righteousness, and then I've forgotten rights and music, that amounts to some kind of social norms. So the kind of practice is described as I can sit down and forget everything. And then Confucius was asking what the practice is about. So Yan Hui said, I smash up my limbs and body, drive out perception and intellect, cast off form, do away with understanding, and make myself identical with the great thoroughfare. 堕肢体去聪明，离心去智，通于大同. Right. It's kind of the non-dual awareness in meditation that Professor Northrop was talking about. And there is another practice called the facing of the mind, 心在. And in the practice, it was saying that don't listen with your ears, listen with your mind. Don't listen to your mind, but listen with your spirit, or qi, 听自己气. And in this listening to qi practice, emptiness is the key. He said emptiness is the facing of the mind. And what does emptiness involve? The following passage gives us some clue. look into that closed room, the empty chamber where brightness is born. So supposedly in some kind of supreme meditative state, some form of brightness, that kind of experience was happening. And I suppose that a sense of self as a existing entity that does not show up in this kind of experience. So part 3 is the relation between the selfless person and the world. So in a paragraph, Zhuangzi talked about the teacher of mind, the teacher of mind. 无师乎, 无师乎. And actually he was talking about music, about the joy of heaven. And what does the music or the joy of heaven involve? Here is a passage. Thus it is said, if you have come to know the music and the joy of heaven, your life is just heaven's own activity, and your death is just the transformation of all things. When you are still, you share the intrinsic powers of the yin. When you move, you share the undulations of the yang. I take yin and yang to signify the natural world. So this is an intriguing and profound passage that I like it very much. 静而与阴同德，动而与阳同波。And I think pour here, wave and undulation is probably not accidental. That somehow through the experience of music, Zhuangzi really appreciate that there is a kind of a state of being whose nature is not entity-based, but rather is a kind of resonance-based that exists between the person and the environment. That's something that is kind of touched upon in the case of cooking. Right? When the cooking dissecting the cow, there is some kind of alignment that takes place between the cook and the ox and the environment. Right? As cooking was looking all around him, feel satisfied. So, and this cooking dissecting the cow scenario was earlier described as in perfect rhythm and keeping time to music. So, Professor note of spatial temporal neuroscience that he has just talked about, I think is one of the very helpful scientific progress that can help, I think, to give a kind of modern explanation. So his view is like seeing the nature of the brain, not as an isolated entity, but as a relation, as a world-to-brain relation. And he further characterized the relation in terms of different waves or frequencies of the brain and the world, where they are integrated and nested with each other. And that relation is a neural predisposition, in his view, for mental features, such as having a sense of self and consciousness. So, here is my conclusion. Zhuangzi has argued for an ontological thesis that there is no such thing as a persistently existing self in a person's mental realm. And Zhuangzi has shown that the content of a no-self thesis can be experienced in a highly skillful practice, such as meditation. And despite no self, there is an intrinsic connection between the natural world and the person, which can be probably characterized by a world-to-person or world-to-brain relation. And AI, due to its incredible power computation, is widely regarded as posing a major threat to the supreme status of a person who possesses an extraordinary power of reasoning and intelligence. A person is unique, however, in another dimension, that he has a sense of self. He may further engage in practice of meditation and eventually losing the sense of self and come to realize that a persistently existing self is an illusion. And it's very unlikely that AI can engage itself in meditation in which it can lose a sense of self, since AI does not seem to have a sense of self to begin with. What it is to be a person equipped with a sense of self is a possession of, if we use note of work, neural predisposition characterized as a world-to-person or world-to-brain relation, or embodiment or embedded relation. So unless it's demonstrated how AI can be built in such a way that is intrinsically connected to the world instead of possessing the powerful capacity of computation, it's unclear how AI can possess a sense of self and eventually realizing that self is an illusion. So in this regard, AI has not yet challenged the unique status of being a person. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zheng Kaiyuan. China is always seeking for simplification, but without sacrifice or annihilate the true self. That's the Professor Zheng Kaiyuan's main topic.